Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back. It's time for jazz, an all jazz episode. Don't turn the channel yet. If you're a rocker or a blues artist or a soul funkster or even into classical music, maybe you'll learn something, and maybe one of these records may spark a nerve, and you might check it out. At least you might stream it or listen to it on YouTube somewhere to check it out. I'm going to start out with a new record and go into some reissues. Some things I've heard before, some things I've never heard. This is the fourth and the newest album by Joel Ross. This is his fourth album on Blue Note Records. He's a vibraphonist, and he's got this killer outfit. They came through Seattle several months ago, and I totally missed it. On here is Joel Ross, of course, on vibraphones. You got Jeremy Corrin on piano, Keno Mendenhall on bass, beautiful bass player. I mean, the whole band is, and this record is so dynamic. Jimmy Dutton on drums, and of course the wonderful Emmanuel Wilkins on alto saxophone, who channels his own version of John Coltrane. And I have several of his albums on its own, but this is a wonderful album. There's a mood to it. I was going to say there's a vibe, of course, vibraphone. I'm a fan of vibes, and I know some people that just don't like. There's two jazz instruments that some people have a problem with. I still don't know why. It's the vibraphone and the Hammond B3 organ. Those are some of the coolest instruments. Are they loungy? Is that why? What don't you like about them? But there's three covers on this album. There's a great cover of Evidence, the Thelonious Monk tune on here. There's two Coltrane albums, Equinox, and it ends with Central Park West that takes over the side 4 on this. It's only maybe less than 5 minutes, but it's broken up over 2 LPs, and it's just a very dynamic recording and a wonderful record. There is a spiritual side to this, but not in the classic spiritual jazz like an Alice Coltrane or something, but it's just a beautiful mood to it. It's a relaxing record at times. It kicks in just enough, but it's a beautiful record. There is a little, a blues overtone to some of it, and that's going to lead me right into the next release. But highly recommended, Joel Ross, Nublues, all records that I bought myself with my hard-earned money over the last several months. The next one is the continuing series of the amazing Acoustic Sounds Verve series, and this one caught me off guard, and I've heard this before because I have a lot of this music, or this album actually, on compact disc. I've had it for years. And this is Johnny Hodges and his orchestra. Now, don't let orchestra scare you away, because it's not an orchestra in the true sense. It's just a larger jazz ensemble. Now, Johnny Hodges is one of my favorite sax players, and the other sax player on this, Johnny Hodges plays alto sax, and Ben Webster, tenor sax. Ben Webster is a favorite of mine too, from the bebop era for the most part. Johnny Hodges was a soloist with Duke Ellington for many years. So they both come out of that period, but the way they interact on this record is just stunning. Ben Webster I always like his reedy sound. You almost can hear the reed, if that makes any sense. It's kind of just a throaty blowing he does. I know that's gonna sound weird to some people, but this is a beautiful record. Also on here is Roy Eldridge on trumpet, Vic Dickerson trombone, Billy Strayhorn, of course, who played with and co-wrote with Ellington for a long time, on piano, Jimmy Wood bass, and Sam Woodyard on drums. Beautiful record. Some traditional songs, Going with the Wind, Blues Aplenty, Don't Take Your Love From Me, Satin Doll, Regina Rock, and again, it's a bluesy jazz, a larger ensemble, but this is a killer record. This has a bluesy, soulful jazz things to it. I think this is the kind of jazz record that someone who doesn't, who's not really into jazz might like, and it's an introduction, because it's a bit upbeat, but it's got the wonderful ballads too. And of course, these beautiful jackets. I mean, this is the Chad Kassem collaboration, one of many that he's doing, and successfully, beautifully putting out these amazing sounding records and beautifully reproduced records. I mean, look at that wonderful, wonderful cover. Doesn't that doesn't remind you of sort of winter in New York, Blues Aplenty. I mean, I don't know if that's New York, but it looks like New York City, my vision of Manhattan to me. This is recorded in 1958, and it's a killer lineup and a killer sound. Highly recommended on the newest release of Verve Acoustic Sound Series. Just great. Now, this is one I passed up when it initially came out. I know this record because I have the mono box. I do not have an original. I do not have a 70s reissue. I have the mono box that Rhino Atlantic put out several years ago of John Coltrane. And this is Olé. And this is the stereo version. This is the Rhino high fidelity version that now, because this didn't sell as well of the 5,000 numbered editions, my number is 3724. It's getting into retails. I picked this up at one of my retail locals, and it's a fantastic sounding record. I tell you, some people prefer mono, but this is a wonderful sounding record. This is recorded, I believe, 1961, and this is very influenced in terms of the Spanish theme of it, Olé's, by the year before Miles Davis's Sketches of Spain. Now, I'm a huge fan of Sketches of Spain. That's one that some people get scared off because of this neoclassical orchestration, Gil Evans orchestration. I love Sketches of Spain. This is nothing like Sketches of Spain except for the Spanish influence. This was on Atlantic Records. He owed, I think, another record to Atlantic before he's going to Impulse. And the week before this, I think, or just before he recorded this for Atlantic, he recorded his first record that would come out on Impulse. So it kind of goes back and forth. This is an excellent sounding record, and it's a beautiful record. The whole side one, 18 minutes plus, is Olé by John Coltrane, and it's got a repetitive groove. It's not like, in the spiritual sense of love supreme, it's not like that, but it does have a little bit of that sort of Indian Zen thing, even though it's Spanish. I know I'm confusing, and I know my continents and countries, and I know the difference between the African continents and Europe and Spain, but there's a certain vibe he has going on here. And on here is George Lane, Freddie Hubbard, McCoy Tyner, Reggie Workman, Art Davis, and Elvin Jones. And then George Lane adds on another song, and Reggie Workman. This is an excellent album. And I believe, Eric Dolphy. Eric Dolphy isn't named. That's George Lane. George Lane, because Eric Dolphy was signed, I believe, to Prestige and couldn't use his name at the time. But these Rhino high fidelities are excellent. They come with a little slip book that tells you the history of the record, and of course the tape box. And that these are available in stores. I mean, I'm fine. I maybe wish they would sell them retail, but the ones that aren't selling out right away of the 5,000, the numbered ones, and I bet you eventually maybe they do non-numbered ones for retail. We'll see. I have no inside information about that, but this is John Coltrane, Olé, with the wonderful, there's your hype sticker there, if we can get in focus. Fantastic gatefold and fantastic record. Highly recommended. If you're sleeping on the Rhino hi-fis, I would not. Next is some recent issues from On the Tone Poet, the Blue Note label, that are cut by Kevin Gray and curated and produced by Joe Harley. And this is an interesting series. I think they've done a couple of these. The only one I have so far from the Transition label, which was an independent label later acquired by Blue Note. And this is Bird Blows on Beacon Hill. I love about this really kind of is a label. I think they only had 15 titles ever. And this was a label by the producer Tom Wilson. And I'll get into a little story about him because I think it's really important to talk about Tom Wilson. But this is a great record. This is also around 1957, 1958, I believe. And what I like about this is it kind of is similar to the covers. I don't know date-wise, but that Smithsonian Folkways put out, where they had a black basic cover, and the photograph was, the cover was originally, pasted over. Here we got these Stoughton-like covers that Tone Poet's been putting out. It's not a gatefold, but it's a beautiful, beautiful photographed cover. And these transition records came with these little booklets inserted, and they reproduce these faithfully to the original. I've never had a transition release, but these faithfully reproduce their liner notes inside, the details. This was recorded in 1956, Harvard Square, Cambridge, and it has the great sort of liner interior. The label was out of Cambridge, and it talks about the entire record and the label a little bit here. I love this record. Now, Tom Wilson, let me tell you a little about Tom Wilson. One of the few African-American producers worked for a major label back in the 1960s. He would go on to work for MGM Records, where he produced Mothers of Invention. He produced Velvet Underground. He went on to Columbia Records, where he produced 3 Bob Dylan albums, or at least 2 Bob Dylan albums, plus Like a Rolling Stone, the single. He produced Leonard Cohen. He was an amazing producer. So this was his jazz label. I think they released about 15 records in total. And this is a fantastic record. This is a record that would be good for someone new into jazz as well. It's a bop record, not a hard bop, more in the bebop a little bit, but it's just a beautiful sounding record, really well recorded. And I love that Joe Harley and Kevin Gray are working to put some of these transition records. So I'm gonna probably pick on some of the other ones. On this record is Donald Byrd on trumpet, piano is Ray Santisi, bass is Dud Watkins, and Jim Zitano on the drums. Fantastic release, Tone Poet, Blue Note Records. Another Blue Note record that I just fell in love with, and this is a record originally recorded in 1969, and this is Total Eclipse, Bobby Hutcherson. Now, what interests me on this record, I expected this to be that typical 1968-69 kind of soul funk record, the kind of jazz you'd hear on the detective and cop shows and in the late 60s, and kind of a funkiness of urban America, but it's not like that at all. This is a little bit of an out there record, not way out. Total Eclipse, Bobby Hutcherson. It's got Chick Corea on it on piano, of course, Harold Land. This is the first time, I believe, that Harold Land and Bobby Hutcherson hooked up together, and they would do records into the early 70s together before Chick Corea went on to form Return to Forever. Reggie Jackson on bass and Joe Chambers on drums. I think one of the kickers on here is the final original Pompey Inn, and it's a 9-minute tune on here. We got a song by Chick Corea called Matrix. There is a mood to this record. It's a little spiritual in a way and a little ethereal. But again, as I said with the Joel Ross record, I'm a big fan of the vibraphone. And this has a gatefold from the period, from the sessions here. This is produced by Francis Wolff and Duke Pearson. And Duke Pearson will be coming, producing the next record I showed too. But I just love this record. I like that this series of Blue Note records are really different than what's been coming out on the Tone Poets, this stuff. And they're coming from different eras, obviously, 1958, 1969, and then 1971. This fantastic record that I had never heard before. This is Wayne Shorter, Odyssey of Iska. Now, this is from 1971, and this is from my point of view, what I know about Wayne, this was a very personal record, a very record of climate, of almost like sort of Japanese influences, and it's very spiritual and very meditative. The songs alone, the titles, Wind, Storm, Calm. Now those three are just really beautiful, almost avant-garde in essence. On here, you have Wayne Shorter on tenor and soprano, Dave Friedman on vibes and marimba, Gene Bertoncini on guitar, Ron Carter bass, of course, and Cecil McBee on bass. And then 2 different drums switching out, Billy Hart, Al Muzon, and Frank Cuomo on more drums and percussion. And this is produced by Duke Pearson as well, like he did the previous album that was co-produced for Bobby Hutcherson. Side 2 opens up with the only non-original track on here, which I'm not going to even try to pronounce. It's a Brazilian tune, it's sort of a samba, and it's almost the one tune that doesn't fit with everything else. It stands out, but it's really a beautiful Brazilian type of samba going through it for 11 plus minutes. And then it ends up with Joy, which is a 9-minute track that ends the album, which is probably the most Avant, out there, intense song on this record. The rest of this record is very spiritual in a Avant way, but very kind of a mood-based record. And the interesting thing about this is recorded just prior to him hooking up with Joe Zawinul to form Weather Report. And what's really interesting about this, I found when I read the liner notes by Leonard Feather, the great jazz critic, he talks about an upcoming performance and world tour, and then he says a new project he's putting together with Joe Zawinul called Weather Forecast. Now, I don't know if Weather Report, that's the band I know he's referring to, was ever considered to be called Weather Forecast, or that Leonard Feather just simply got it wrong. And one that's been out a couple months here, and I keep going back to, and this is the full recordings of A Night at the Village Vanguard, the complete masters, Sonny Rollins. This is one of those unusual tone poets that's a 3-record set, a trifold here. And what's great in the liner notes that come with it, Joe Harley talks about requesting the 15-inch tapes, inches per second tape at the time, the master tape that was used to put this out. And when he talked to the librarian, the tape vaults, the Blue Note Universal tape vaults, I guess, found out that, wait, there's some other 7 1/4 tapes here. And it turned out those were the original tapes. This is recorded on location at the Village Vanguard. This is the first recording live at the Village Vanguard. This is the first sort of show with Sonny Rollins as a leader, with Wilbur Ware on bass, Elvin Jones on drums, Donald Bailey bass, and Pete LaRocca on drums. And what they did here, instead of just doing the proper album of the original single disc, they put this 3-record set of pretty much the entire thing. This is a mono recording. It's a great session. The performance is excellent. And I've been in that small room several times, the Village Vanguard. It's kind of a triangle-shaped room. It's not a, you can almost touch the stage there. So I can just imagine, squeezing in to the side. And I mean, there's been tons of live recordings since. This tape was originally recorded in 1958 at the Village Vanguard, and it's the complete masters of this amazing session of shows, afternoon show and an evening show. And he had a different rhythm section at night. During the day, he had Wilbur Ware on bass, Elvin Jones on drums, and at night he had Donald Bailey on bass and Pete LaRocca on drums. So there's a lot of overlap. There's conversations with Don Was and Sonny Rollins, who is still alive today. There's a great photograph of the Village Vanguard. They found these Francis Wolff shots from the sessions. There's a whole essay by Bob Blumenfeld. There's excerpts from Saxophone Colossus, The Life and Music of Sonny Rollins by Aidan Levy. Just a wonderful, Nate Chenin writes an article, and of course the producer's notes from Joe Harley. A fantastic set. The complete master, beautifully packaged as Tone Poet always does, Sonny Rollins. Lastly, something completely different. JMI Records Plum. This is such an ambitious set. David Murray, Questlove, and Ray Angry. Now, David Murray, I think we're about a year apart age-wise, from Oakland, California. So I was born a year earlier across the bay in San Francisco. Questlove, of course, is a great drummer, leader of the Roots, and Ray Angry, this amazing piano player, synthesizer, keyboard player, organ player. 2 years ago, I believe, I think it was 2002, they got in the studio with for JMI. JMI is this amazing, all analog, independent record company out of New York. And I have several of the records that they had sent me about a year ago. I did that interview with Sasha Berlinger, the vibraphonist, who is an awesome new young musician. But this is something I pre-ordered about 6 months ago plus, and I paid for it, and it just came in the last, I don't know, 6 weeks or so. And it takes time diving into this. This is 4 LPs. This was a jam session of these 3 dynamite players. Now, this is an album you have to take time with. When I first got it, I tried to play it all through on a Saturday afternoon, and I did, and it was just, I was lost in a certain way. Some of it like brought me in right away, and some of it I just had to get away from. And I don't mean to get away from the music, but there's some intensity on this record. I'd say some of it is Avant, but some of it is very accessible. In fact, most of it is very accessible. It is a beautiful sounding record. There's some beautiful moody bits with these synthesizers. I mean, Ray Angry does, you know, the bass playing with his organ and his synthesizers, so you get that wonderful bottom. I would say I was expecting something a little like the Bitches Brew, where 1970 Miles Davis recorded all this jamming and Teo Maceo takes it all and edits together. That's not what this is. These are complete songs as far as I know, complete takes, but there is an intensity to some of it. Some of it has these beautiful low, like the baritone clarinet that David Murray plays. There's one side that has a solo of him on that, which I just love that bottom. Questlove has a drum solo one section. I'm not always a fan of a drum solo, even when I listen to Art Blakey or Elvin Jones records. It depends the mood I'm in. And even in rock and roll, there are fair few drum solos. In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, yes. Cream, Wheels of Fire, Ginger Baker, yes. Toad, yes. But I'm not always a fan, and that it depends the mood you're in. Now, could they have they could have edited this down to a 2-record set, got some of the solo things out. I don't know if that's necessary, but I think you have to take this in pieces, and there's certain moments that are just stunning on here. It's in this beautiful, it reminds me of the Bee Gees' Odessa, but more purpley than red. Actually, it's literally plum color. That's what it is. There's the that, and you have not really a liner notes, but you have the details. They're so anal with their recording, which is pretty wonderful. Produced by Stephen Mandel, executive producer Jay Cohn. They're the partners in JMI. Excuse me. They talk about all the microphones, recording gear, all that nerdy stuff that you analog freaks just love to read about, who put this together. And this was something that really wasn't planned to be a 4-record set. And they got all this stuff and they said, Jesus Christ, we got to put this shit out. And I'm glad they did, because it is wonderful. It's got, the 4 LPs and these individual sleeves. Yes, they are polylined for you nerds out there. They're beautiful, pressed beautifully. No issues. I didn't get one pop or crackle that I recall. But I had to listen to this over the last 6 weeks in stops and starts at times. Sometimes I would put an entire side on and it would be beautiful. Sometimes they would start with this mood and it would go along with a certain funky beat and a funky mid time signature, and then it would get intense and freak out. So they were going, I could totally see this as a jam session where you're kind of getting into it and you just want to explode. I really like when Ray Angry's synthesizer thing like hits these low notes and really starts things off, and then the drums come in, and then of course the baritone clarinet I believe. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful on here. It's really a hodgepodge. It is a record. It's a challenging record at times, but it's accessible. I think it's accessible in stages, in chapters. Some of the chapters are going to assault you, and some of it are going to really kind of bring you, in a certain mood, in a lower key mood. But I just really think it's a remarkable record, and I think it's one of the important records that's come out in a long time in jazz. And I love that it's just this trio for a change. And it's I mean, would you call it a super group in jazz and new jazz? I don't know. You got someone my generation and these two younger musicians. I mean, not young. Of course, they're in their 40s, right? I think, aside from David Murray, who's my age, up there. But this is an amazing accomplishment. But I tell you, get this record and take your time with it. Let it roll out. See what grabs you initially, because there are a couple of pieces on here that didn't grab me right away that all of a sudden lured me in by the third listen. And I think that's what a successful record can do. Most of the music I like, sometimes it takes time, and I think that's on here. So some people say edit it down. You're gonna edit the White Album down. You're gonna just have a 1 LP of this. I think that would be a disservice to this recording that just came out, I guess, after the pandemic, and I'm all the power to them to release it all in this form. So I would check this out definitely. JMI Records, Plum, David Murray, Questlove, and yes, Ray Angry. Jazz shit. Mazzy Jazzy. Mazzy loves you.